Hello, Dmitri. Thank you for allowing us to come in and do this interview with you today. Just give a quick brief to the camera about yourself, who you are, and where we are at the moment.
My name is Dmitri Logunov. I'm a curator of entomology at the Manchester Museum. I've been working on the Manchester Museum since 2001, when I was appointed first as a keeper of zoology, being in charge of all zoological collections, and then my duty was slightly changed and I became in charge of insects and other arthropods.
Magic. And how long have you been doing that for now?
For almost 20 years. Almost 20 years.
You look like you've aged today.
Yes, almost preserved like a mummy.
And did you start as a curator of arthropods, or did you work your way up?
No, I started as keeper of zoology because spider collections, which I was in charge of, they belong to zoology collections rather than entomology collections. That was reflected the kind of British tradition at that time. But now I know that in all natural history museums, spider collections and collections of centipedes and millipedes, they were moved to entomological departments rather than to stay in zoology, which sounds quite logical.
Yeah.
And then I was moved with my collections to entomology, and because my background is entomology, so I was graduated from entomology department, so that sounds very natural to me.
Makes sense as well,
Absolutely
logically,
makes
yeah.
sense, yeah.
Where did your passion come from? Because my passion for insects came from just simply being stuck in an ant nest when I was younger, and my mum coming out of the hose and spraying me down. Where did yours come from?
It's a difficult question because from the age about 5 or 6 years old, as far as I remember, I've been always interested in collecting everything moving, insects, spiders, centipedes, millipedes, snails, everything. But my particular interest in spiders was actually generated and inspired by professor of entomology who was in charge of entomology department where I was a student. And he actually encouraged me to start working with spiders. This is how I became a professional taxonomist, working with spiders for a rather long time.
So you'd say this professor was your role model back then, yes?
He was actually a professor of insect physiology.
Oh, okay.
But his first passion and first interest were spiders, and he published an identification key to European part of Russia, spiders of European part of Russia, and he was very supportive to any students paying any little interest in spiders. So he was observing, monitoring these students, and then he actually invited them for a discussion, and depending on the results of the students was or was not encouraged to do this.
So you're saying you followed?
Yes, I followed his suggestion, and then I spent 2 field trips as a student in the Caucasus collecting spiders, and then my final master science project was devoted to spiders as well.
And would you say you've got a favourite species of spider at the moment, or do you just enjoy the taxa as a whole?
There are several groups of spiders I like particularly. For instance, the jumping spiders. This is my main group of interest. I published a lot on them. But there are some other groups of spiders, like wolf spiders, particularly burrowing groups of wolf spiders. Some groups which don't have proper English common names, but only scientific names. Yeah, so it's generally.
There's a species of spider which I really like, and they make like the net and then they throw it on something. Are they ogre spiders or are they?
Yes, ogre spider, the family Deinopida is a tropical group, and actually I collected few of them in various places like Vietnam or Costa Rica, and I even described new species of ogre spiders from Vietnam.
So you netted them?
Well, it was not me in that particular way, it was my friend who's been working in Vietnam for a long time, and he collects spiders for me and for us. So all these spiders are now in the Manchester Museum, and that spider was collected by him.
Oh, okay. And as some people may know, insects are quite a complex group of organisms, with new species being described every day, species being lost or rediscovered. How do you keep on top of that in the collection that you own here?
Well, it's impossible to keep on top, so we can just only hope that what we do will be useful for whatever future biodiversity studies could be, because we cannot protect insects as individual species, with very few exceptions, because insects should be protected and conserved as part of the environment. Therefore, we need to take care about particular part of the forest or in bigger areas of land. However, even with such approach, we even don't know what we are able to protect and what we can. Because if I'm correct, till now there are about only 10-12% of real insect and spider diversity described to date. Therefore, we basically know nothing. For many species which have been described, we know only them by museum specimens. And basically they are known to the humanities, to us, as museum specimens only by their names. We know very little, if nothing, about their biology. Therefore, it's still a long way to go, and whether you'll be able to describe all species occurring on Earth before environment is damaged, it is a big question. So I cannot, I don't know.
It just goes to show that these sort of collections has a really big historical value, doesn't it? Because not only did we start conservation in the wrong way, where we were protecting certain species, and then we learned to protect a habitat, to protect as a whole, but we also learned as well that the collections that you have here have a historical value to science as well, because they help you in the identification as well.
They not only have a historical value. For instance, the oldest specimen in the Manchester Museum dates back to 1802. It is a beetle, small beetle, which is still presentable, which still can be used for research. It has its own scientific and historic value. We have many other specimens like that. But the more importantly is to see natural history collections of insects as very large ecological databases, because specimens in the collection are important. So we need to see them, we need to examine them, we need to have a chance to look at them. But information about these specimens, particularly where, when, and who specimens were collected, is as much important as specimens themselves. For this collection, as all collection of natural history, they actually create a massive biological, ecological database, which we consult, we use for various reasons, including, for instance, habitat preferences or phenology of species when we analyze dates of appearance or disappearance of species in nature, and so on. If we study taxonomy, if we describe new species, we need to select particular specimens, which we call types. Types become standards of particular scientific names. And these standards are kept in natural history museums particularly carefully, because they are to be consulted by anyone undertaking a taxonomic revision. So, and number of types reflects the scientific value of any natural history collection. Therefore, collections are important for all the reasons. It's basically a resource which is used for biodiversity, taxonomic and ecological research, and we need to make sure this resource is kept properly, is fully accessible, documented properly, and so can be used by whoever needs it.
A biodiversity goldmine, basically.
Yes.
Magic. And I've got a couple of questions from some people eager to watch the episodes that we'll be making. One of them is, why do you feel that these collections are important in regards to environmental life sciences, which you've already basically answered? And if you could offer a piece of advice to anyone out there wanting to work with insects or get involved in entomology, what advice would you give them?
Oh, well, it's very difficult to give suggestion or advices. My personal understanding is that if we want to manage whatever environmental habitat or whatever habitat on Earth, we first of all need to know what is out there. Without knowing what lives there, what function of this particular organism is, we cannot predict how this particular system could be developed or could react on whatever human impact or any impact could be.
Yeah.
Therefore, collection helps to do this work, and therefore collections are important. Before we know what is out there, before we describe all elements of particular natural systems, we cannot do reasonable predictions, or we don't know what should be done in order to protect, conserve, or enhance or maintain. Therefore, it's very important, in my opinion. This is why I'm doing this.
Because I know that one of the elements of having a collection such as this is very useful in terms of creating distribution maps, especially when you're predicting invasive species like Harmoniax iridis, harlequin ladybird. When that arrived in the States, they used a couple of collections there to predict where it would go, and it partially works, but being an invasive species, it didn't work very well.
Yeah. Collections are very important for this sort of projects when you can actually trace back the origin, the place of origin of particular intruder, if you like. But it's also important from some other points of view. For instance, real genetic diversity of organisms, of particular species, which may be assessed on the basis of collections now. Because modern methods of DNA extraction allow to use museum specimens, and then we can analyze what the genetic diversity, plus of course morphological diversity, used to be with regards to particular organism, what it is now. So who knows what is happening. Another thing is, for instance, several years ago, one of the researchers assessed dates of taken from data labels of British bumblebees, because the majority of our specimens of bumblebees were collected between 1950s and 1970s, approximately that period of time. So the researcher assessed dates of taken from their data labels, and she found out that 50, 60 years ago, bumblebees appeared and became active about 2 weeks later than they do now. So whether it's true fact or it's just phenomenon based to whatever collections were here, we don't know. But if we did not have collection, we would be unable even to trace this fact, this phenomenon, which now can be assessed, analyzed, and properly, thought over to think what is happening. Whether it's climate change, whether it's warming, or maybe it's just fluctuation, or maybe it's just simply restrictions to our particular set of data. So
Magic, that's great. Thank you for that. We'll head on to a little short tour then, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what we are looking at is a draw with very interesting insects I like a lot. Insects are called orchid bees. These beautiful creatures, most of them in this draw are males. Orchid bees are famous for their certain biological traits. Males collect fragrances. So they travel, they fly long distances, sometimes up to 10 kilometers one way in a day and returning back, visiting many different flowers, including orchids. This is obviously why they're called orchid bees. They collect fragrances and then they make their own mixture. And this mixture is used to impress female in order to mate. So beautiful creatures, beautiful biology. The problem is that it's very easily to deceive males and attract them using certain oils. So you can easily collect them and you can assess diversity of orchid bees on a particular tropical forest. But it's very difficult to collect females because they do not do this. They live somewhere up in the canopies, making their nest, and as a result, many species of orchid bees are well known by males, but females still remain unknown. This is one of the draws from our foreign Hymenoptera collections, containing bees, wasps, ants, and the like. This particular draw contains specimens of which are known as scolia. Scolia are parasitoid wasps, which have a very, very interesting biology. They actually lay eggs on larvae of other insects living in the soil. So female has a very good sense of smell, and she feels the potential prey in the soil and then digs into the soil, lay eggs on the larvae and comes out and then search for another larvae. So this is very, very interesting biology in my opinion, and very unusual look of these creatures. I don't think they have sting as compared to some other wasps, because instead of sting they use what we call ovipositor to lay eggs. Of course, it doesn't mean they can protect themselves. They're quite capable of that. Okay, what I'm holding is one jar with specimens of spiders in it. So our spider collection and all spider specimens are preserved in 70% alcohol, because specimens are soft, and if you let them to dry, they will shrink and they lose their body shape, and then will be not usable for scientific study. So they are kept in 70% alcohol. It's some sample inside a tube, having the same data labels saying us where, when, and who collected them. Also identification labels, and also a number related to the provenance. So each jar in our collection contains specimens of just one species of spider, but samples originally came from many different individual collections, and this number, we call it accession number, tell us from which collection particularly this sample came from and who donated it and when. So this is how spider collection is kept here, and we have many hundreds of these jars, and our entire collection of spiders is about 200,000 specimens in total.